Kerbal space program is a game not known for its accessibility. Being built around a complicated simulation of real-world orbital mechanics, you have to wonder what kind of person would spend their time playing this instead of doing anything productive with their life. Ah, that's right. Anyways, lately I've been thinking that KSP is just too easy, so I decided to make it harder. Specifically, I'll be playing on career mode with all the difficulty options turned up to the max. Well, almost all of them. For the sake of my own sanity, I'll be allowing quick saves as well as a few other tweaks to make sure I can actually beat the game before the sun explodes. But don't worry, you'll see that this challenge will still push my skills to the absolute limit. The goal here is simple: plant a flag on every possible planet and moon in the Kerbaler system. And who knows, we might even learn something along the way. Welcome to Kerbal Space Program Expert Mode. Oh, and I should also mention that I have a handful of mods installed. They're mostly for visuals and quality of life, so everything you're about to see should be possible in stock KSP. But if you actually plan on playing this game in 2025, I'd recommend all of these. Now on to the actual game.
In the beginning, the universe was created. This made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move.
Starting out, you'll notice that my space program is, in technical terms, broke as fuck. Before I can do anything else, I'll need to find a way of getting some funds. I could ask for a loan, but that requires reputation, which I am similarly in short supply of. This, of course, is the work of my first few difficulty settings. Starting funds, science, and reputation are all set to their minimum, and rewards for all three are limited to 10% of their normal values. Needless to say, this will be a consistent problem. There is one way to obtain some starting cash, though. I head over to Mission Control and accept some contracts to gather science from Kerbin and escape the atmosphere. Not that I'm actually able to do that last one yet, but the advance payments provide enough of a capital investment to afford a basic command pod. I'll name it the Kit, load up Jebediah, and roll it out to the launch pad. There, I can have Jeb take a crew report, then get out and contemplate the state of things for my first 2 science experiments. Once he's back on board, I can recover the kit to bring home 0.4 science points. Completing the contract, along with a few world-first milestones, netted me over 3,000 funds to play around with. Now that I can actually afford more than one part, I'll take a contract to launch my first vessel into the air. In the VAB, I upgrade the kit with a solid rocket booster, some fins for stability, and the all-important Mystery Goo experiment. Also, a parachute might come in handy. With that, the kit too is ready for launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff! We have a liftoff!
Once Jeb is hurtling through the air, I can take a crew report and Mystery Goo observation while flying over Kerbin, then deploy the parachute. 1,000 meters from the ground, the chute opens, and Jeb immediately blacks out because I'm playing with 1% G-force tolerances. Luckily, he wakes up just in time to land on the shores for some more science. The command pod can normally only store 1 crew report at a time, but by getting Jeb on EVA, right-clicking the pod and clicking Take Data, I can free it up for another report. Upon recovery, the kit too brings my totals up to 10,000 funds and 3.2 science. I could use a bit more science though, so I'll send Valentina to get some from the desert launch site. It goes much the same as the previous mission. I get another crew report and goo observation in the air, pop the chute, and land out in the middle of the desert. While she's there, Valentina does a high jump to grab an EVA report from flight. Good job, Val. All this fun in the sun gets me up to 5 science, which is enough to research Engineering 101 in the tech tree, unlocking the TD12 decoupler and thermometer experiment. I'll put these to use building the Kit 3, featuring a 2-stage booster which should hopefully be enough to reach the upper atmosphere. The launch goes about as well as I could hope for. Once Jeb is in the stratosphere, I run the experiments, then drop the second stage and arm the parachute. One sudden deceleration later, the Kit 3 splashes down off the coast of the KSC. I try to get an EVA report while jumping over the water here, but other than showcasing Jeb's diving skills, nothing much is accomplished. Despite this, the mission rakes in another 3.6 science points. And now we return to Valentina, who I have take the Kit 3 back to the desert for a spin. I try to steer for the mountains to the east to see if I can land in a new biome. 30 kilometers in the air, I grab an extra mystery report and attach the booster. On the way down, I notice some strange structures in the foothills, but don't have much time to investigate before Val pulls 7 Gs and decides to take a nap for a little while. When she wakes up, I can grab some more science from the mountains and recover the pod. Back at the KSC, I check mission control and see that I have a contract offer to test a Hammer SRB at the launch site. An interesting quirk of these part testing contracts is that taking one gives you the part in question for free if you haven't unlocked it yet, so I can use this to save myself some science and funds, at least for now. Over to the VAB, I'll swap out the flea boosters I was using before with more powerful hammers to make the Kit 4, a rocket that should be capable of escaping the atmosphere. Now it's time to actually go to space in this space game. The ascent nearly causes him to black out, but as the Kit 4 passes an altitude of 70 kilometers, Jebediah Kerman becomes the first Kerbal to reach space. But what goes up must come down, and the Kit 4 isn't quite built to reach orbit, so after running the experiments, I decouple the booster and prepare Jeb to be reunited with the ground. I tried to aim my landing towards the grasslands biome to the west of the KSC, but I overshot it a bit, and the pod splashes down in the ocean instead. Regardless, the Kit 4 knocked out the Hammer test contract as well as the contract to reach space I've had since the start of the game, so I'll consider it a success. Now that I've amassed quite a few funds, I can start working towards my next goal of the playthrough, reaching Kerbal orbit. With the science I've earned so far, I can research basic rocketry, which unlocks the first liquid fuel tanks and engines. However, to go for orbit, I'd also like a heat shield and the barometer experiment, both of which are locked behind survivability for 15 science points. Now that might not sound like a lot, but remember that I have science gain set to 10%, so if you're used to playing this game on normal difficulty, add an extra 0 to all these numbers to get an idea of what I'm dealing with. Basically, I need a way to get a lot of science in not a lot of time. Luckily, all the science I need is right in my backyard. For reasons I don't understand, but I'm very grateful for, each facility at the KSC has its own unique biome for science experiments. But that presents its own problem. I need a way to get around the KSC. Despite being able to assemble and launch rockets at multiple sites across the world, the Kerbals apparently haven't figured out how to make cars or planes yet, so I'm stuck having to literally reinvent the wheel. Behold, the Science Tumbler. Quite possibly the dumbest thing I've built in this game. It works by using the reaction wheels in the command pods, which are usually meant to steer your rocket in flight, to just roll the whole thing around. I'll get Jeb to drive and Bob to help do the science. I'm sure they won't mind being put in the spin cycle. Steering the vehicle is somewhat of an involved process, but steadily it makes its way around the KSC, collecting science as it goes. You might have known about each KSC facility having its own biome, but did you know that some of the individual buildings also have separate biomes? I assume you're meant to land on top of them, but rolling up to the side worked well enough for me. After rolling its way around town for a few minutes, the tumbler runs low on power, so I have to recover it. but it collected enough science to unlock the parts I need, so mission Orbit Kerbal can proceed on schedule. The Kit 5 will feature a barometer experiment in addition to the ones I've already been using, as well as a heat shield to protect it from atmospheric re-entry. To get to orbit, I'll be using my new liquid fuel toys, but getting enough performance out of the craft will require a few tricks. For trick number 1, I connect a decoupler below the swivel engine and set it to enable crossfeed, then start attaching fuel tanks to the sides. The swivel will be able to fire through the decoupler's hollow center, and the game is smart enough to drain fuel from the side tanks first. So once those are empty, I'll be able to decouple them to reduce mass. I keep adding tanks until I hit the 30 part limit of the level 1 VAB, then it's time for trick number 2. When building in the VAB, you can see these green attachment nodes that show where fuel tanks can be stacked on top of each other. But what you may not know is that these nodes are also relevant in flight, because the game uses them to calculate drag. I take the front-facing tanks, flip them upside down, then offset them back into position. This makes the occupied node, the one attached to the lower tanks, face forward. Because the game thinks this side of the tank is attached to something else, it will experience significantly less drag than the other side, making the flip tank much more aerodynamic than it really should be. While this is definitely an unintended exploit, the margins for this mission were very tight, and I don't quite have the scienter part count to spare for nose cones, so this is about the only way I could think of to make it work. Also, if you haven't played this game for several thousand hours, you might be cowering in fear from the imposing massive numbers at the top of the VAB screen that I've neglected to mention until now. This is the Kerbal Engineer readout, and it's not as intimidating as it looks. The rows represent the different stages of the vehicle, and the columns show the stats of each stage. The most important ones to pay attention to are TWR and Delta V. TWR, or thrust-to-weight ratio, compares the thrust of the engine to the weight of the craft. Naturally, if this is below 1, I won't be going anywhere anytime soon. But as the engine burns fuel, the craft gets lighter, and TWR increases. Good old trial and error has taught me that my Kerbals can't withstand much higher than a TWR of 3, so I'll try to throttle back the engines when I drop the first stage. Delta V, on the other hand, stands for change in velocity, and measures the total velocity change the craft is capable of. For example, to accelerate from 0 to 100 meters per second takes 100 meters per second of delta V. Then, to decelerate from 100 meters per second back to 0 takes the same. This measurement is useful because certain maneuvers will always take the same amount of delta V, regardless of how big or small the vehicle is. Atmospheres complicate things, of course, but reaching Kerbal orbit generally takes around 4,000 meters per second, so I'm confident I'll be able to make it. Now that the impromptu tutorialization is out of the way, it's time to launch Jeb into space again. With previous launches, I've mainly been focused on going up, but to get to orbit, I'll need to not only reach space, but also be going fast enough to the side to throw myself at the ground and miss. Doing this efficiently necessitates the use of a gravity turn. Basically, as the Kit 5 ascends past the thickest layers of the atmosphere, I pitch down to start accelerating horizontally. I use the Kerbal Engineer HUDs at the top of the screen to time my turn, and try to be angled about 45 degrees by the time my apoapsis reaches 20 kilometers. Full disclosure, I actually have no idea if the way I'm doing this is efficient at all. I throttle back the engine when the TWR gets a bit too high for my liking, and drop the drop tanks when the first stage runs out of delta V. They promptly hit the core and explode, but nothing I really care about is damaged here, so I'll continue on my way. As my apoapsis reaches 50 kilometers, I pitch down to almost horizontal and burn the engine until the apoapsis hits 75 kilometers, putting Jeb solidly on a suborbital trajectory. Then I cut the throttle and take stock. From experience, I know that the necessary velocity for low Kerbal orbit is about 2,300 meters per second. Currently, the Kit 5 is moving at about 2,000 meters per second, and has 764 meters per second of delta V left in the tanks, so simple math says I should be a-okay. I coast to space, then fire the engine to boost up to orbital velocity and then some, raising my apoapsis up to over 300 kilometers. This is well within what the game considers to be space high over Kerbal, giving me access to a whole new slew of science. But after that, it's time for Jeb to get home, so I'll perform a retrograde burn and decelerate enough to drop out of orbit. All that's left to do now is watch the light show.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Okay, I've been rambling for 16 minutes and we've only just gotten to orbit, so in the interest of finishing this video sometime this year, I'm gonna have to pick up the pace a bit. After orbiting Kerbal, my next target is the moon, or Mun if you like pronouncing things wrong, but first I require additional funding. So I'll accept a few contracts to conduct focus surveys of Kerbal. To do that, I'll build the Sky Chaser, a reusable rocket plane thing. Look, I haven't unlocked jet engines yet, so this is the best we're getting. Once that's done, I also take some contracts to run experiments on the surface near the KSC. Sounds like a job for the Science Tumbler, 2. Now with somewhat improved steering control. But after the contract grind is over, I'll research general rocketry, unlocking a larger fuel tank and more powerful engine. I'll use these to build the Kit 6. It's like the Kit 5, but better. Weighing in at 17.7 tons, it's just barely under the limit for the level 1 launch pad. Much like its predecessor, the Kit 6 uses drop tanks to fuel the engine on ascent. But this time I get to orbit with over 1,000 meters per second of delta V remaining. More than enough for a moon flyby. One small problem though. Without upgrading mission control and the tracking station, I can't plan maneuver nodes or even see if I'm going to encounter the moon at all. So I'll just have to eyeball my translunar injection. I'm pretty sure that's how NASA does it anyways. Starting the burn just as the moon rises over the horizon, I'll raise my apoapsis to about 10,000 kilometers. The moon is a pretty wide target to hit, but I don't want to get too close or I might get flung out of Kerbal's gravity well entirely, and that would be bad. And just like that, Jeb becomes the first Kerbal to fly by the moon. It's a rather distant flyby, but still close enough to get some science. The gravity assist did make his return trajectory a bit too steep, though, so I have to raise the periapsis to not burn up on re-entry. Oh, and did I mention that re-entry heating is like 20% greater than normal? After the moon flyby, it's time for moon orbit. Just kidding, it's actually time for more survey contracts. Using the cash I've made, I can upgrade the launch pad to level 2, raising the weight limit from 18 tons to 140. Now I can go back to being bottlenecked by part count. Okay, now it's time for moon orbit. For the Kit 7, I piled on as many fuel tanks as I could fit, and added some hammer SRBs for good measure. Jeb makes to orbit with 2,000 meters per second left, and he's gonna need it because I'm going for a much closer approach this time. As I enter the moon sphere of influence, I burn retrograde to lower my periapsis to 20 kilometers. Then, I'll perform another burn to capture into a low orbit. Congrats, Jeb, you're now the first Kerbal to orbit 2 different celestial bodies. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about Valentina. Her time will come, but first I need to get the science back to Kerbal. And once again, I just need to eyeball it. Because the moon is moving to the right here, I want to time my ejection burn so that I'll be going to the left as I escape, cancelling out the moon's orbital velocity and allowing me to fall back to Kerbal. Turns out, though, I undershot it and have to perform an extra burn to lower my periapsis into Kerbal's atmosphere. But hey, this is why I brought extra fuel. Kit 6 and 7 got me 22 science points. Unfortunately, I'm also rapidly running out of easily accessible experiments. So while I do more contracts in the background, let me explain how this whole science thing actually works. In KSP, a craft can be in one of 6 different situations on any planet. Landed, splashdown, flying low, flying high, space low, and space high. Experiments provide unique science reports for each situation on each planet. However, planets have a number of different biomes which can also give unique science reports, but only for some experiments and situations. Landing in every biome on Kerbin would be a pain, so what I'd like to do is just fly over them in space instead. And as it turns out, there is precisely one experiment I have access to that provides biome-specific results in low space. The EVA report. Why the EVA report in particular? I have no clue, but it should give me just enough science to go for a moon landing. One small problem, I can't actually do EVAs in space yet. That requires an upgrade to the astronaut complex for a cool 75,000 funds. Which brings us back to the contracts I've been grinding out this whole time. More sky chasing and science tumbling gets me up to 92,000 funds, which is enough to finance an astronaut complex upgrade, as well as another flight of the Kit 5. Valentina, you're up. This time, she's lifting off from the Boomerang launch site. Being at a high latitude means that I'll spend less Delta V counteracting Kerbin's rotation as I launch onto orbit. But still, I have to aim a little to the west to get my inclination to 90 degrees. Why 90 degrees? Because by launching onto a polar orbit and letting the planet rotate under me, I can easily pass over all biomes on Kerbin without having to spend any extra fuel. So that's exactly what I'll do. Every time the xScience mod tells me I'm in a new biome, I'll have Valentina poke her head out of the capsule and write down what she sees. I'm not sure what the point of any of this is, but it gets me science, so I won't complain. Anyways, in a little less than an hour, Valentina has visited every biome on Kerbin. Well, maybe not visited so much as flown past at orbital velocity, but there will be time for Petantics later. Right now, I need to get back to Kerbin and collect all the science. Alright, time to do the same thing again, but on the moon this time. As a bonus, I also pick up a few contracts to get surveys from space near the moon, as a polar orbit works for these as well. I still don't have maneuver planning, by the way, so instead of setting up an encounter that will put me on a 90-degree inclination from Kerbin orbit, I'll just have to wing it when I get there. But it works out. Not counting Kerbin's KSC biomes, the moon has the most biomes of any body in the game at 17. It also rotates a lot slower than Kerbin, so Val will probably be here a while. But in a little over 4 days, I get all the biomes and survey locations. That means it's time for more surveys. And even more surveys. Somewhere in here I get enough money to upgrade mission control, letting me accept more contracts at once, and getting 50% of the way to unlocking maneuver nodes. But after like 2 weeks in space, the game finally decides to stop giving me moon survey contracts, so I'll let Valentina go home. Returning from a polar moon orbit is a little more complicated, because I need to wait for the moon's orbit to align to allow me to escape at the right angle to return to Kerbin. I mean, I probably could have just left at any time and deorbited after escaping the moon, but I wanted to be efficient. This time I overshot it anyways. But soon enough, Val lands somewhere in the Highlands. A search party is on the way. All those EVA reports brought my science up to 77, so I'll research basic science, unlocking the Science Junior. I'll use that to build the Sky Chaser 2, and get material studies from around Kerbin. These give me enough science to research advanced rocketry, unlocking bigger fuel tanks and the Terrier engine, the last things I'll need to land on the moon. That means it's time to build the 8th and final Kit rocket. It'll have every experiment I've unlocked so far, using the efficient, vacuum-optimized Terrier engine to land on the moon, a core stage to get there, and 4 Thumper SRBs to boost it to orbit. Jeb, it's showtime. The Kit 8 uses the same tricks as its predecessors to eschew nose cones and radial decouplers. The Kraken, however, doesn't seem to be too pleased with my methods, and this thing has a tendency to explode when staging the boosters. I'm also forgoing control fins, and the Reliant engine has no gimbaling, so this ascent was flown really under the barest suggestion of control. Anyways, this is why I'm keeping quick saves enabled. Regardless, the core stage has just enough fuel to get Jeb into orbit around the moon. I'll ditch it here for now and deorbit, aiming for one of these craters in the Midlands. For landing on the moon, you want to start your deceleration as late as possible to avoid wasting fuel. The Kerbal engineer's suicide burn countdown is useful for this. Just wait until it reaches 0, then max the throttle. At least that's what you should do. I spend a bunch of time screwing around trying to find a flat landing spot. But eventually, Jeb touches down on the moon. Okay, turns out it wasn't flat enough, but after a short hop, Jeb touches down on the moon for real. Time to do some science, then have Jeb get out and plant the flag. I'll call it First Landing Crater. Look, I never claimed to be good at naming things. Aside from landing and planting a flag, I also have a contract to collect a moonstone from the Breaking Ground DLC. You can find these basically anywhere, so it's really just a matter of looking around for a slightly different rock. I spot one over here, so Jeb goes EVA jetpacking to go grab it. With the moonstone in Jeb's pocket, it's time to head back to Kerbin. With no atmosphere, I can pitch over almost immediately and burn until my apoapsis is high enough to clear any terrain that might get in the way. Then I'll circularize my orbit and do the same moon escape you've already seen. Rewatching the footage, I can already tell I overshot it. Now that I can reliably land on the moon and return, a lot of new science opens up. So, let's do the same thing again. Using the money I made from the last mission, I was finally able to upgrade the tracking station and unlock maneuver nodes, so now I can plan on a moon transfer that doesn't suck. A while back, I picked up a contract to perform an orbital rendezvous around the moon. Hey, remember that core stage I left in orbit last mission? Well, Valentina's going to pay it a visit. Targeting the debris brings up the ascending and descending nodes, which show whether the orbital planes are aligned or not. Turns out I'm a few degrees off, so I'll need to perform a normal burn to align them. Then, at periapsis, I'll capture into an orbit that'll bring me around within 1 kilometer of the target. I don't really have any advice for how to do this, just mess with maneuver nodes until you get it. Once I'm close enough, I'll make sure my nav ball is the target mode, then burn retrograde to cancel out my relative velocity. And just like that, rendezvous complete. Now it's time to do what we came here for. I'll use the last of the core stage fuel to deorbit, and in no time, Valentina touches down in the highlands. After collecting the science, she jetpacks up a nearby hill to get a good view of Kerbin on the horizon, and plants the flag. Anyway, let's go home. While Jeb and Val have been doing a fine job so far, lately I've been thinking about expanding the workforce. The elites don't want you to know this, but the Kerbal stranded in orbit are free. You can just take them home. To do that, though, I'll need a larger crew capsule, which is why I'm sending Jeb back to the moon. With the science I've accumulated, I can unlock the P re-entry module, which I'll use to build the Calico, a rocket capable of carrying 2 Kerbals to orbit. I'll have Jeb fly it to rescue our stranded friend. If you're good at this game, you can launch directly onto an intercept course with a vessel in LKO. I, however, am not, so I'll launch into a lower orbit first, and then set up a maneuver to rendezvous. It takes a bit of time warping, but soon enough I can rescue Gleamore Kerman. She's an engineer though, and what I'd really like is another pilot, so after recovering Gleamore, I'll send another mission to go get Gia Kerman. Gia's a pilot, so after rescuing her, I'll immediately launch her back into space for another moon landing. Along the way, I'll get some more temperature scans from low orbit for a contract. I also have a contract to get some EVA reports from the surface, so I'll try to land near the survey sites in the southwest crater. Then it's time for Gia to take a jetpack joyride to get the surveys. She did run out of EVA propellant on the way back, though, so she'll have to leg it the rest of the way to the ship. Eventually, though, she makes it back on board, and we can return to Kerbal. After the moon, it's time to start exploring Minmus. While taking strictly less Delta V to land on and return from than the moon, its inclined orbit and much smaller sphere of influence make it a lot harder to get an encounter with, which is why I've waited until after unlocking maneuver nodes to launch a Minmus mission. To get to Minmus, I'll build the Calico 2. With 2 seats, I can have Jeb pilot the ship and Bob run the experiments. With a scientist on board, I'll be able to restore the Mystery Goo in Science Junior to collect multiple reports. After doing a flyby, I'll launch another mission with Valentina and Bob to orbit Minmus, and get EVA reports from space over every biome like I did with the moon and Kerbal. Naturally, after returning from Minmus orbit, I'll go for a Minmus landing. With lower gravity than the moon, Minmus is ideal for biome hopping. On normal difficulty, it's easy to complete the entire tech tree by just hopping around here, but in this case, it's going to be nearly required to get enough science to go interplanetary. So I'll launch Jeb and Bob aboard the Calico 3 to do just that. While Minmus is easy to land on, I don't exactly have much Delta V to spare, so I'll be targeting a landing zone near the edge of the Great Flats. Being on the border of 2 different biomes means I'll be able to get double the science. Jeb plants a flag while Bob collects the science. Then it's just a short hop to the lowlands. I had some fuel to spare, so I'll fly over to this nearby plateau to get science for the slopes and midlands as well. With 400 meters per second of Delta V left, I have just enough fuel to return to Kerbal. After landing in 4 different biomes, the Calico 3 collected more than 100 science, and with that, I can officially declare the Kerbal system conquered. Unfortunately, that's about all I have to show for now. Yeah, it turns out video editing is hard, and I'm rapidly running out of time to get this out before I have to move to another state. But hey, if you're still watching, that must mean you found this funny and entertaining. Or at least you're just using this as background noise to drown out the voices in your head. I've been there. Either way, I guess I have to make another one of these now, so if you want to be there when I do, like and subscribe? Is that what I'm supposed to say? Anyway, see you then. Or not.